Don't kill me, human. I'll warm your bed. Colonel Maxon Thorne had heard a lot of surrender offers in 15 years of war. This was the first time one stopped him cold. The Arcticon warrior knelt in blood-stained snow at his feet, her violet skin stark against the white battlefield. Silver hair hung loose from warrior braids. Ice-blue eyes held his without flinching, even as violet blood seeped from the plasma wound in her side. Around them, the glacier was silent. The kind of silence that came after violence when the world held its breath and counted the dead. Maxon's rifle was aimed at her head. One squeeze of the trigger and she'd be gone. One less enemy in a war that had already taken too much. But those words hung in the frozen air like a question he didn't know how to answer. The frozen hell of Arcticon had taught Maxon three truths about warfare. First, the cold kills faster than bullets. Second, trust is a luxury soldiers can't afford. Third, every battle plan dies the moment the enemy pulls the trigger. Today, he was learning a fourth truth. Sometimes the enemy doesn't need to pull the trigger at all. The ambush had erupted from the ice like a living nightmare an hour ago. One moment, Maxon's 8-man reconnaissance team was crossing the glacier valley, boots crunching on centuries-old snow. The next, the world exploded in plasma fire and crystalline shrapnel. Maxon had dove behind a frozen outcropping as energy bolts vaporized the air where his head had been. The heat from the blast created instant fog in the sub-zero atmosphere. Visibility dropped to arm's length. The screams of his men cut through the howling wind, each one a knife to his gut. Contact right, Corporal Jax Raines's voice had crackled through the calm, young and terrified. The kid was 25, fresh off his third deployment, too young to die on this frozen rock. Maxon rolled left, combat instincts overriding conscious thought. His rifle came up smooth, decades of training compressed into muscle memory. Through the swirling snow and steam, he caught glimpses of their attackers. Arcticon warriors, their pale violet skin nearly invisible against the ice. They moved like they'd been born from it, because they had been. The female warrior had materialized 3 meters away, blade gleaming with that strange luminescence Arcticon steel possessed. Tall, lean, deadly. Her combat suit hugged curves that would have been distracting if she wasn't trying to kill him. She struck fast. Maxon parried with his rifle stock, felt the impact shudder through his arms. Enhanced strength. The blade carved a line across his shoulder guard, screaming metal on metal. He pivoted, drove his knee toward her midsection. She twisted, impossibly caught his leg, threw him like he weighed nothing. He hit the ice hard enough to crack it, tasted copper blood. The warrior was on him before he could rise blade at his throat. Maxon stared up into eyes the color of deep winter ice, beautiful and absolutely merciless. "You die here, human," she'd said. Her voice was melodic despite the killing edge in it. "Like all invaders die." Then the sky had split open with thunder. The Terran gunship came in low and fast autocannons ripping the glacier to pieces. The warrior's head snapped up, and for one heartbeat, Maxon saw fear on her face. Real fear. She tried to flee, but Maxon grabbed her ankle. If he was dying on this ice, he was taking one of them with him. The world became noise and light and shaking earth. Plasma bolts from the gunship carved trenches in the ice. The Arcticon forces scattered like smoke, vanishing into crevasses and ice caves. The warrior jerked, taking a glancing shot meant for him. She stumbled, violet blood spraying across snow. Maxon yanked her down as another salvo screamed overhead, his body covering hers on pure instinct. Protect the asset, even an enemy asset. By the time the autocannons fell silent, the glacier looked like the surface of an alien moon, cratered and smoking. The Arcticon ambush party was gone. The silence after combat felt wrong, like the world holding its breath. Maxon became aware of warmth against his chest, not warmth, the absence of cold. The warrior beneath him was perfectly still, her breath coming in short gasps. He rolled off, weapon up. She didn't move to attack. Couldn't. The plasma bolt had burned through her suit and into flesh. Not immediately fatal, but bad. Colonel Jax Raines appeared from the fog, rifle tracking. "Sir, are you?" The young corporal saw the wounded Arcticon, his weapon centering on her head. "Say the word, sir." Maxon looked at the warrior. She stared back with those winter eyes, pride keeping her silent, even as shock set in. Around them, the ice was littered with bodies. 3 of Maxon's men down, not moving. 5 Arcticon warriors, visible, all dead. A massacre on both sides. He should have said yes. Should have let the corporal end it clean. The mathematics of war were simple and brutal, but she knew what was coming, accepted it with the same resignation he had seen before the gunship arrived. Like she'd expected to die today, one way or another. "She's coming with us," Maxon said. The warrior's eyes widened just slightly. First sign of surprise she'd shown. "Sir, regulations?" "I know the regulations, Corporal." Maxon hauled himself to his feet, every joint screaming protest. "Patch her up enough to survive transport. General Navarro is going to want to talk to whoever planned this ambush." When Corporal Jax approached with the medical kit, the warrior spoke. One word in her own language, musical and harsh at once. "What did she say?" Jax asked, applying trauma foam to the burn. "She said, 'Why?'" came Sergeant Marcus Webb's voice. The team's linguistics specialist limped over, holding his arm at an awkward angle. "She wants to know why you're not killing her." Maxon crouched to the warrior's eye level. Up close, he could see the aristocratic bone structure. He'd studied enough intelligence briefings to recognize nobility. "What's your name?" he asked. She stayed silent for 3 long heartbeats. Then in heavily accented English, Lissa Kaler." Maxon felt something cold settle in his gut. Kaler, as in General Kaler, the Articon military commander who'd been a thorn in Terran operations for 6 months. "Well, Lissa Kaler," Maxon said quietly, "you're going to tell me why your father sent you and your unit into what was obviously a trap." Something flickered in those ice-blue eyes. Pain, maybe. Or betrayal. The medevac shuttle arrived 14 minutes later. Maxon watched his wounded loaded first. Private Chen with a sucking chest wound. Lieutenant Torres with burns across half her face. Corporal Davidson, who wouldn't wake up. 3 body bags went in last. 3 men who'd woken up this morning expecting to see tomorrow. Lissa Kaler was loaded aboard in restraints, still bleeding violet across the deck plating. She didn't speak during the flight back to forward operating base Frost. Didn't cry out when the shuttle hit turbulence and her wound reopened. Just stared at the ceiling with those alien eyes. Maxon sat across from her, the entire flight rifle across his knees watching, making sure she stayed breathing. The forward operating base sprawled across a plateau, a temporary city of prefab structures and energy barriers holding back Arcticon's endless winter. Maxon had been stationed here for 8 months. 8 months of dying for a mining operation that everyone knew wasn't about mining at all. The medical bay was organized chaos when they arrived. Maxon's wounded were triaged immediately. Torres would live, but it would never look the same. Plasma didn't just destroy tissue, it destroyed the future. Lissa was placed in a sealed medical pod. Dr. Sarah Venn worked on her with clinical efficiency. Maxon watched through the observation window as the doctor closed the plasma wound. "She'll live," Venn said when she emerged, stripping off blood-stained gloves. "Though she probably wishes she wouldn't. That burn should have killed her, tough species the Arcticans." "How long until she can be interrogated?" "Physically, tomorrow. Mentally." Venn shrugged. "That's above my pay grade, Colonel. But I'd give her a day to process whatever hell she just survived." Maxon nodded. He should report to General Navarro immediately. Should do a lot of things. Instead, he stood at the observation window and watched an enemy warrior sleep. Her face in unconsciousness looked younger than he'd expected. Late 20s, maybe. Old enough to have killed, young enough to still dream. "Sir." Jax Rains appeared at his elbow, clean uniform replacing blood-stained gear. The kid had that hollow look soldiers got after their first real firefight. "General Navarro wants to see you, says it's urgent." Of course it was. General Navarro's office occupied the command center's top floor, offering a panoramic view of Arcticon's frozen wasteland. The general herself stood at the window when Maxon entered, hands clasped behind her back. She was 52, iron gray hair cut short, face lined with the kind of stress that came from sending people to Dune and lying about why. Maxon had served under her for 3 years. He respected her tactical mind, even if he didn't always agree with her methods. "Colonel Thorne," she said without turning, "I understand you brought me a present." "Lissa Kaler, ma'am, daughter of General Kaler, unless our intelligence is wrong." "It's not wrong." Navarro finally turned, and Maxon saw the gleam in her eyes that meant opportunity. "Do you know what we can do with General Kaler's daughter?" "And the war." Maxon kept his voice neutral. "Leverage." Navarro moved to her desk, pulled up a holographic display. Tactical maps of Arcticon red zones marking enemy territory, blue showing Terran control. More red than blue. "The Arcticans have been running us ragged because we don't understand their command structure, their cultural weak points. Kaler's daughter gives us both. She could also be feeding us disinformation. Which is why you're going to extract the truth." Navarro's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm assigning you as her primary interrogator. You speak basic Arcticon, you've studied their culture, and most importantly, you saved her life. That creates a debt in their society." Maxon thought about those ice blue eyes, the resignation in them. She didn't ask to be saved. No one asks for anything in war, Colonel. We take what we can get. Navarro's expression hardened. Find out what General Kaylor is planning at the southern mining operation. Find out why he sent his own daughter into an ambush. Find out what they're really after in those mountains. Maxon saluted and left before he said something career-ending. The walk back to medical felt longer than it should. His body was finally catching up to the adrenaline dump. He'd need to get checked out himself. But first he needed to understand why an enemy general would sacrifice his own daughter. Lissa was awake when Maxon entered the medical pod. She sat upright on the examination table, still in restraints, her combat suit replaced with a simple gray medical gown. The wound in her side was sealed with synthetic flesh, angry red, against her violet skin. She looked up as he entered, and Maxon saw the calculation in her eyes. Two predators sizing each other up. "Colonel Maxon Thorne," she said. Her English was better than he'd expected. "I looked you up in your base's database while your doctor was closing my wound." Maxon raised an eyebrow. "They let you access our systems." "Let" is a strong word. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Your security protocols are adequate for human hackers. Less so for someone trained since childhood to infiltrate enemy networks." "And what did you learn about me?" "That you're a widower. Your wife was a xenoarchaeologist killed 2 years ago. That you've been on Arcticon for 8 months leading reconnaissance operations with a 93% success rate." Her head tilted slightly. "That you hate this war but are very good at fighting it." Maxon felt something shift in his understanding of the woman before him. She wasn't just a soldier. She was intelligence-trained and dangerous. "My turn," Maxon said, pulling up a chair. "Why did your father send you into that ambush?" Lissa's expression didn't change. "What makes you think it was an ambush?" "Because I've been hunting Arcticon forces for 8 months, and they don't make the kind of tactical mistakes your unit made. Crossing open ground with no cover, poor spacing communication protocols that practically broadcast your position." Maxon leaned forward. "Your father sent you to die. I want to know why." For a long moment, Lissa said nothing. Then she laughed, bitter and humorless. "You saved my life, Colonel. In my culture, that creates what we call kathara, a debt of blood. I am bound by honor to offer you something of value in return. I don't want anything from you." "Then you don't understand my people at all." Lissa's eyes locked onto his. "A kathara cannot be ignored. It must be satisfied, or it brings shame not just to me, but to my entire bloodline. So I will make you an offer, and you will accept it, because refusing would be its own kind of insult." Maxon waited. "I will warm your bed, human," Lissa said quietly. The words settled between them. Maxon's first instinct was to dismiss it as cultural misunderstanding. But the look on Lissa's face stopped him. She was completely serious. "I'm not sure I understand what you're offering," Maxon said carefully. "In Arcticon culture, when a warrior is defeated and spared by an enemy, they may offer to join that enemy's household as companion. It is considered honorable, more honorable than death because it acknowledges the superior warrior's mercy. You're talking about becoming a prisoner with benefits." Lissa's expression flickered with something that might have been amusement. "Your language makes it sound crude. In my culture, it is tradition going back thousands of years. The defeated warrior serves the victor until the debt is satisfied. Sometimes weeks, sometimes years, sometimes a lifetime." Maxon sat back, mind racing. This was either sophisticated manipulation or he'd stumbled into something cultural his briefings had never covered. "And if I refuse, then you shame me. An ashamed warrior has only one honorable path." Lissa's fingers flexed in her restraints. "Your doctors took my blade, but there are always ways to find death if one is determined enough." It was manipulation, had to be. But the conviction in her voice made Maxon hesitate. He'd seen cultural suicide before on other worlds. Some species took honor more seriously than survival. "I need information," Maxon said, "about your father's operations in the southern mountains, about what you're really mining from those facilities, about why he would sacrifice his own daughter." Lissa's smile was cold. "And you think pillow talk will loosen my tongue?" "I think you're smarter than that." Maxon began pacing. "Your intelligence trained to infiltrate and extract. Your father sent you to Diane, which means either he discovered your real loyalty or he's playing a game so deep even you don't understand it." He turned back to face her. "Either way, you're burned. You can't go back. So what are you really offering me?" For the first time, Lissa looked uncertain. The mask cracked just slightly, and Maxon saw something vulnerable beneath. "Information," she said finally. "Real information. About the Frost clan and what they're building in the southern mountains. About my father's true allegiance." Maxon studied her face looking for the tell that would reveal the manipulation. He found nothing but conviction and bone-deep weariness that matched his own. I can't accept cultural traditions I don't fully understand, he said carefully. But I can accept your help as an intelligence asset. You provide information, I provide protection. No bed warming required. Lissa's expression shifted to something that might have been relief. You are either very wise or very foolish, Colonel. Both probably. Maxon moved toward the door, then paused. The proof you mentioned. Where is it? Hidden in the one place neither our jailers nor my father would think to look. Lissa smiled sharp as broken glass. Inside me. Before Maxon could ask what she meant, alarms began screaming throughout the base. Red emergency lighting flooded the medical bay. His combat comm activated immediately, Jax Raines's voice crackling with static. Colonel, we've got incoming multiple Arcticon fighter craft attack vector from the southern mountains. The transmission cut off in a burst of interference. Maxon ran to the window. In the distance beyond the base's energy barriers, he could see them. Sleek Arcticon attack craft moving in formation. They're coming for me, Lissa said quietly. My father wants to make sure I don't talk. Maxon turned back to face her. She stood now, having somehow slipped her restraints. The medical gown hung loose, and he could see the outline of something beneath her skin near her ribs. Not natural, not organic. The proof, she said, touching the spot. It's in a data chip bio-integrated into my skeletal structure. My father doesn't know I have it, but he knows I know too much. Her eyes met his. So he's going to kill everyone on this base to silence me. The base shuddered as the first plasma barrage hit the energy barriers. How many craft, Maxon asked. Based on the attack pattern 12. Lissa moved to the window. Heavy assault configuration. They'll breach your barriers in approximately 4 minutes, then systematically destroy every structure. No survivors. Unless we give them what they want. Me, yes. Lissa turned to face him, and in her expression, Maxon saw that same acceptance of death. I can walk out there, surrender myself. They'll take me and leave the base intact. They'll kill you. Eventually, she smiled sadly, but slowly enough that you could evacuate your people. You're wounded. It's a fair trade. Another impact rocked the base. Through the window, Maxon could see energy barriers flickering, beginning to fail. 4 minutes was optimistic. They had maybe 3. Every tactical instinct screamed at him to take her offer. Trade one enemy combatant for hundreds of Terran lives. The mathematics of war were simple, but Maxon was looking at Lissa's face. That same conviction, that same willingness to sacrifice everything for what she believed was right. No, he said. Lissa blinked, surprise flickering across her features. Colonel, I said no. Maxon activated his comm. General Navarra, this is Thorne. We need immediate evac for all non-essential personnel. Route them to the underground shelters and prep for base evacuation. Navarra's voice came back sharp. Thorne, what the hell are you doing? We can hold this position. Not against 12 heavy assault craft, we can't. Ma'am, you need to trust me. A pause, then. You have 2 minutes to convince me this isn't cowardice, Colonel. Maxon looked at Lissa. The intel you have, is it worth more than this base? It's worth the entire war. No hesitation, no doubt. General, Maxon spoke into the comm. The prisoner has intelligence that supersedes this installation. I'm requesting emergency extraction for myself and the asset. Have a stealth shuttle ready in 90 seconds. Another long pause. Finally, Navarra's voice, authorized. But Thorne, if you're wrong about this, I'll court-martial you myself. The comm clicked off. Maxon turned to find Lissa staring at him. Why, she asked softly, why risk everything for someone who was trying to kill you this morning? Maxon thought about wars that made less sense the deeper you looked, about warriors who accepted death too easily. Because I'm tired of letting good people die for bad reasons, he said. Now come on, we've got 60 seconds to not get vaporized. They ran. The base was controlled chaos. Maxon led Lissa through corridors he knew by heart, avoiding the main thoroughfares where questions would slow them down. Jax Raines met them at the vehicle bay, a stealth shuttle already warming up. The young corporal's eyes widened when he saw Lissa, but he didn't ask questions. Pilots prepped, sir, Jax reported. General Navarra says you've got one shot at this. The Arcticon craft are tracking all outbound flights. Then we'll have to be very convincing. Maxon turned to Lissa. Can you broadcast on Arcticon military frequencies? Yes, but they'll know it's me immediately. That's the point. Maxon's mind was working 3 steps ahead. Tell them you escaped, that you're fleeing north in a stolen Terran transport. Give them coordinates that will take them away from our actual flight path. Understanding dawned in Lissa's eyes. They won't believe me unless I sound desperate. Can you fake desperate? Her laugh was hollow. Colonel, I've been desperate since I was 16 years old. I don't have to fake anything. They boarded the shuttle. The pilot, a grizzled veteran named Santos, didn't even glance at Lissa before engaging the engines. Lifting off in 10, Santos called back. Hope you two know what you're doing. Maxon, strapped into the jump seat, gestured for Lissa to do the same. Through the shuttle's viewport, he could see the Arcticon attack craft concentrating fire on the base's main shield generator. Now, Maxon said to Lissa. She closed her eyes, and when she spoke, it was in rapid Arcticon, her voice pitched high with carefully crafted panic. Maxon didn't understand all the words, but he caught enough. Escaped. Fleeing. North. Coordinates. The shuttle lifted off stealth systems, engaged, running dark and silent. Through the viewport, Maxon watched as 6 of the 12 Arcticon craft broke off their attack, vectoring north. The bait had worked, but 6 remained. The base's shields finally failed with a sound like shattering crystal. Plasma fire raked across prefab structures, turning them into molten slag. Maxon watched the place he'd called home for 8 months burn. How many had made it to the shelters? How many were still inside when the walls came down? Colonel. Santos's voice was tight. We've got a problem. One of the craft is tracking us. Stealth isn't holding. Maxon looked at Lysa. She was staring at the pursuing craft, her face pale. It's my father's personal fighter, she whispered. He knows. The shuttle shuddered as plasma fire grazed their port side. Santos cursed, throwing them into evasive maneuvers, but the Arcticon craft was faster. He's going to kill us all, Lissa said, and for the first time Maxon heard real fear in her voice. He'd rather see me dead than let me share what I know. Another impact closer this time. Warning lights blazed across the cockpit. Santos was good, but he was flying a transport against a fighter. Math that didn't end well. Maxon made a decision that probably meant the end of his career if he lived long enough to have one. Santos, take us south, he ordered, into the storm belt. Sir, that's suicide. The atmospheric interference will tear us apart. So will that fighter. At least in the storm, we've got a chance. Santos hesitated for maybe 2 seconds. Then he banked hard, diving toward the roiling clouds that perpetually covered Arcticon's southern hemisphere. Storms there were legendary atmospheric chaos that grounded all conventional aircraft. The Arcticon fighter followed. They hit the storm wall at terminal velocity, and the world became violence. Lightning arced across the shuttle's hull. Wind shear threw them sideways, gravity losing all meaning. Maxon's stomach tried to climb out through his throat. Beside him, Lissa had gone completely still, eyes closed, lips moving in what might have been prayer. Behind them, the Arcticon fighter was still coming. Maxon could see it through the storm, impossibly graceful. Someone very skilled was piloting that craft. Someone who wanted them dead more than he wanted to live. There, Lissa's eyes snapped open, pointing ahead through the chaos. Ice Cave System Coordinates 047 by 332. We can land inside land. Santos's laugh was slightly hysterical. Lady, I'd be happy just to crash gently. But the pilot was already adjusting their vector, fighting the storm toward the coordinates. Maxon saw it through the driving snow and lightning, a massive opening in a glacier face, big enough for a shuttle. Maybe. Santos went for it. They hit the ice cave entrance at speeds that made Maxon's vision tunnel. The shuttle's wings clipped the sides, tearing metal, but they were through, sliding on ice deeper into the glacier. Santos reversed thrusters, trying to slow them, but momentum had its own ideas. The shuttle hit something solid and stopped. Hard. Maxon's restraints cut into his chest, slamming the air from his lungs. His head bounced off something, stars exploding behind his eyes. Beside him, Lissa grunted in pain, her wound reopening. Everyone alive, Santos called from the cockpit, his voice shaky. Define alive, Maxon managed. Outside, through the cracked viewport, the Arcticon fighter circled the cave entrance. It couldn't follow them, and the opening was too narrow. But it could wait. Then lightning struck the glacier face above the entrance. Not natural lightning. Plasma fire from the fighter trying to collapse the cave, bury them alive. The ice began to fall. Move! Maxon hauled Lissa from her seat, half carrying her deeper into the cave. Santos was right behind them. The entrance collapsed with a sound like the end of the world. Tons of ice crashed down, sealing them in darkness and silence. Maxon's emergency light flickered on, casting shadows across blue ice walls. They were alive. They were trapped. And somewhere outside, General Kahlor's fighter waited. Well, Santos said into the darkness, at least it can't get worse. That's when Maxon's comm crackled to life, and he heard General Navarro's voice distorted by interference but unmistakable. Thorn, you son of a bitch. The base is gone. 200 personnel dead or missing. And you better have a damn good explanation because right now the official story is that you defected with an enemy agent. Maxon looked at Lysa, her face pale in the emergency lighting, violet blood on her lips. She looked back at him with those ice-blue eyes and smiled slightly. Still think saving me was the right choice, Colonel? Maxon thought about his dead wife, about burning bases and collapsing ice, about a war that made less sense by the minute. Ask me again when we're not about to die, he said. And in the crushing darkness of Arcticon's ice entombed and hunted, Colonel Maxon Thorne realized that saving Lysa Kaler had been either the best decision of his life or the absolute worst. He'd know which in about 4 days, if they lived that long. The ice cave smelled like death and time. Day 3. 48 hours trapped beneath a glacier. Maxon Thorne sat with his back against frozen stone, watching his breath crystallize in the beam of his failing emergency light. 48 hours of rationed air, melted ice for water, and the growing certainty that General Kylor's fighter was still waiting above. Santos had stopped talking on the first day. The pilot sat near the collapsed entrance, methodically checking the shuttle's wreckage for anything salvageable. He'd found 3 protein bars, 2 thermal blankets, and a hand-crank emergency beacon that might punch through 100 meters of ice. Might. Lysa Kaler lay wrapped in one of those thermal blankets, violet blood seeping through makeshift bandages. The crash had reopened her plasma wound. Without proper medical treatment, infection would set in. On Arcticon, infections moved fast and killed faster. She was dying, and they all knew it. Colonel? Her voice cut through the silence, weak but clear. We need to talk. Maxon shifted closer, conserving movement to preserve oxygen. The air in the cave had gone thin, each breath requiring conscious effort. Another 12 hours, maybe less, before carbon dioxide buildup made thinking impossible. Save your strength, he said. For what, a rescue that isn't coming. Lysa's laugh turned into a cough, wet and painful. My father won't leave until he's certain I'm dead. Your people think you defected. We're ghosts, Colonel. Dead already in every way that matters. Santos looked up from the beacon, his face gaunt in the emergency lighting. She's got a point, sir. We could activate this, try to punch a signal through, but General Kaler would intercept it first. Would come down with enough firepower to turn the glacier into steam. The math was brutal and simple. The data chip, Maxon said to Lysa, the proof you mentioned. If we're dying anyway, I want to know the truth. Lysa touched her ribs where the bio-integrated chip sat beneath skin and bone. It won't change anything. Won't bring her back. I know, tell me anyway. She was quiet for a long moment, gathering strength. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of old sins and older grief. Your wife discovered something in the southern mountains 2 years ago. Not minerals, not anything natural. Lysa's eyes found his in the darkness. She found ruins, ancient, older than either of our species. Technology that made our current weapons look like children's toys. Maxon felt ice in his gut that had nothing to do with temperature. The Frost clan. They'd known about the ruins for years, small fragments enough to build their power base in secret. But your wife found the primary site, the mother lode. Lysa shifted, wincing. She was going to publish her findings. Go public. The Frost clan couldn't allow that. So they killed her. The words came out flat, emotionless. Maxon had learned long ago that rage was a luxury soldiers couldn't afford. They staged it as a shuttle malfunction, blamed it on Arcticon sabotage to further the war. Lysa's hand found his in the darkness. My father was part of it. Not the killing directly, but the cover-up. The Frost clan promised him power if he helped keep the secret. Santos made a sound like a wounded animal. All of this, the war, the dying, all of it was just to protect some alien ruins. Not protect, exploit. Lysa's grip tightened. The Frost clan is using the war as cover. While both our militaries bleed each other, they're excavating the ruins, learning the technology, building weapons that will make them untouchable, and selling those weapons to both sides, keeping the war going, profiting from every death. Maxon sat with this knowledge, letting it settle. And the southern operation is slave labor. Lysa coughed again, more violently. They're taking prisoners. Arcticon, mostly some humans, using them in the deep excavation sites. My brother Davin, he's 15 years old. The Frost clan took him 3 months ago. They told my father it was for protection, but he's down there in those mines working himself to death. The last piece clicked into place. Why Lysa had been working as a double agent. Why she'd risked everything. not for ideology or politics or even survival, for family. That's why you're really here, Maxon said. You need someone to help you get him out. I needed someone I could trust. Lissa's eyes held his, fever bright and desperate. Someone who understands what it's like to lose everything to the Frost clan's greed. Someone who might care enough about one scared kid to risk everything. Santos cleared his throat. Sir, even if we get out of this cave, even if we somehow make it to the southern mountains, we're talking about infiltrating a heavily armed facility. 2 people, maybe 3. Against how many? The data chip has facility layouts, Lissa said. Security protocols. Guard rotations. Everything I managed to steal. But I can't extract it myself. It requires surgical tools, medical knowledge. And if we get it out, if we somehow survive this cave, reach the facility, extract your brother. Maxon kept his voice level, clinical. What then? We're still wanted by both sides. Then we expose everything. Upload the data to every public network in the galaxy. Let both our governments explain to their people why thousands died for corporate profit. Lissa's smile was cold and sharp. We burn it all down, Colonel. Maxon thought about his wife, about her smile when she talked about discoveries about lost civilizations and what they could teach the living, about how she died for the crime of wanting to share knowledge. He thought about General Navarra and her casual dismissal, about General Kahlor sacrificing his own daughter, about an entire war built on lies and greed. He thought about a 15-year-old kid named David working himself to death because powerful people needed slave labor. The choice wasn't hard at all. We need to get out of this cave first, Maxon said. Santos barked a laugh. Sir, with all due respect, that's impossible. We've got 100 meters of ice above us, a fighter waiting outside, no equipment, and air for maybe 8 more hours. Nothing's impossible, Sergeant, just improbable. Maxon stood, ignoring the way his vision swam from oxygen deprivation. The emergency beacon, how much power does it have? Enough for maybe 6 hours of continuous broadcast. Why but naman? Because we're going to send a message that General Kahlor can't ignore. Maxon turned to Lissa. You said your father thinks you're dead, that he won't leave until he's certain. Yes. Then we give him certainty. We broadcast your dying confession. Make it public, wideband, impossible to suppress. Make him think you exposed everything before you died. Understanding dawned in Lissa's eyes. He'll have to leave. Have to warn the Frost clan, secure their operation before the data goes public. And the moment he leaves, we dig out. Santos was nodding now. Use the shuttle's emergency charges to blast through the weakest point in the cave ceiling. Time it for when the fighter is out of sensor range. It's still a long shot, Maxon said. His charges might bring down the whole glacier. But it's a chance. Lissa struggled to sit upright, and it gets Davin one step closer to freedom. Santos was already moving, pulling the beacon from the wreckage. Sir, if we're doing this, we need to do it now, while we've still got enough oxygen to think straight. Maxon helped Lysa to her feet. She swayed against him, fever burning. He could feel her heartbeat, too fast, labored. She was running on willpower and desperation. What do I say? She asked quietly. What confession makes my father run? The truth. Maxon activated the beacon. Tell him everything. About the Frost clan, the ruins, the slave labor. Tell him you've transmitted all of it to both commands. Make him believe his world is about to end. Lissa took the transmitter with shaking hands. For a moment, she just held it, staring at the blinking light that represented her last words to a father who'd tried to murder her. Then she began to speak. Her voice was weak at first, broken by coughs and pain. But as she talked, something changed. The fear fell away, replaced by cold fury. She spoke in Arcticon fluid and harsh words Maxon couldn't understand but could feel. Accusation and betrayal, grief and rage. When she finished, Lissa looked at Maxon. I told him I loved him, that I forgave him, that I hoped it haunted him forever. Will he believe you're dying? He knows a death confession when he hears one. She smiled sadly. It's tradition. The dying speak only truth. They waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. The air grew thinner, each breath a conscious battle. Maxon found himself drifting, thoughts becoming sluggish. Beside him, Lissa had gone silent, her breathing shallow. Santos kept watch on a jury-rigged sensor, watching for the fighter's energy signature to fade. Sir, the sergeant's voice seemed to come from very far away. It's moving. The fighter, breaking orbit. Maxon's head snapped up, clarity cutting through hypoxia. You're sure? Positive? Energy signature fading fast. It's running. Then so are we. Maxon hauled himself upright, grabbed Lissa. Santos set the charges, 30-second delay. We'll take cover behind the shuttle wreckage. The sergeant moved with professional speed, placing the emergency charges at stress points in the ice ceiling. His hands shook. Charges set, sir. 20 seconds. They scrambled behind the shuttle's broken hull, Maxon covering Lissa's body with his own. Santos wedged himself into a crevice. The charges detonated with a sound like the world cracking open. Ice exploded inward and upward, the glacier splitting along fault lines. A section of ceiling the size of a transport truck dropped, missing the shuttle by meters. Freezing wind howled through the new opening, and about 1,000 tons of unstable ice ready to come down. Move! Maxon grabbed Lissa, threw her over his shoulder, and ran for the opening. Behind him, he heard the glacier screaming, ice grinding against ice. The cave was collapsing. Maxon hit the opening at full sprint, burst into open air and pale sunlight. The wind nearly knocked him flat. He kept moving, legs burning, lungs screaming. Santos emerged 3 seconds later, diving through the gap just as the entire cave system imploded. The glacier face collapsed inward, swallowing the shuttle, the beacon, every trace of their presence. They'd made it out with seconds to spare. Maxon collapsed in the snow, Lissa tumbling from his shoulder. For a long moment, he just breathed. Real air, cold and clean and infinite. We're alive, Santos said, sounding surprised. We're actually alive. Maxon checked Lissa. She was unconscious, pulse weak but steady. The fever was worse. She needed medical attention. But there was nowhere to go, no base to return to, no allies to call. They were in the middle of Arcticon's southern wasteland, at least 300 kilometers from any Terran installation. And every one of those installations now thought Maxon Thorne was a traitor. Sir Santos was looking at something in the distance. We've got company. Maxon followed his gaze. On the horizon, barely visible through swirling snow, he could see movement. A convoy. Tracked vehicles designed for glacier travel. Arcticon design. We should hide, Santos said. Where Maxon looked around. They were on an ice field, flat and featureless for kilometers. No cover. Nowhere to run. The convoy was heading directly toward them. Well, Maxon said quietly, at least we won't freeze to death. The vehicles arrived in formation, 4 heavy transports with mounted weapons surrounded by smaller scout vehicles. The kind of firepower you brought when you wanted to make a statement. They stopped 50 meters away, engines idling, weapons trained. Maxon stood slowly, hands visible and empty. Beside him, Santos did the same. A figure emerged from the lead transport. Male Arcticon wearing armor that marked him as military but bore no rank insignia. His face was hard and weathered, violet skin marked with scars. He walked toward them with the confidence of someone who knew he held all the power. Stopped 10 meters away. Colonel Maxon Thorne, the Arcticon said in heavily accented English. You're either the luckiest human alive or the most foolish. I haven't decided which. Who are you? Maxon asked. Commander Kale Torren, Arcticon Resistance Forces. The alien's eyes shifted to Lissa's unconscious form, and that is Lissa Kaler, who should be dead according to the broadcast we intercepted 6 hours ago. The broadcast was genuine. She's dying. I can see that. Torren gestured, and 2 medics rushed forward with a stretcher. They moved Lissa with practiced efficiency, started treatment immediately. But not dead yet, which creates interesting possibilities. What do you want? Maxon kept his voice level despite the weapons pointed at his head. The same thing you want, Colonel. To stop the Frost Clan, to end this war. Torren smiled, and it wasn't friendly. Lissa's broadcast was very enlightening. Slave labor, ancient weapons, profit from genocide. My people have suspected General Kalor's corruption for months. Now we have confirmation. And what does the Resistance want with us? You misunderstand human. Torren's expression hardened. We want you to do what you're clearly planning. Infiltrate the southern facility. Extract the prisoners. Expose the Frost Clan's operation. Santos laughed slightly, hysterical. That's suicide. Yes, which is why we're not going to do it ourselves. Torren pulled out a data pad, tossed it to Maxon. Complete facility schematics, guard rotations, structural weaknesses. Everything our intelligence network has gathered over 3 months. Maxon caught the pad, scanned it. The information was detailed, comprehensive. Why help us? He asked. Because my people can't move against Kalor openly. Not without proof that will satisfy the traditionalists, the military loyalists, the politicians who profit from the status quo. Torren's eyes held Maxon's. But dead men can go places we can't, do things we can't justify. And if you succeed, if you bring out proof of the Frost Clan's crimes, you'll do more damage to Kalor's regime than 1,000 armed insurgents. And if we fail, then you die. Unmourned, unremembered, unmissed. Torrin shrugged. But at least you'll die trying to save a 15-year-old boy who's done nothing wrong except be born to the wrong father. Maxon thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. We'll need equipment, weapons, medical supplies for Lissa. Already loaded in Transport 3, food, ammunition, cold weather, gear, surgical tools for extracting her data chip. Torrin smiled slightly. We've been planning this extraction for weeks, Colonel. We just needed someone desperate or crazy enough to actually attempt it. Lissa's broadcast told us you were both. The medics returned. One of them, a female with ice-white hair, addressed Torrin in rapid Arcticon. He nodded, turned back to Maxon. She says Lissa will live. The fever's from infection, but they've administered antibiotics. She'll be conscious in a few hours, functional in a day. Torrin's expression softened slightly. She's strong, that one. Stronger than her father deserves. What's the timeline? Maxon asked. 3 days to reach the facility. 1 night to infiltrate and extract the prisoners. 6 hours to escape before every Frost Clan enforcer on Arcticon comes down on your head. Torrin handed Maxon a weapon, a compact plasma rifle of Arcticon design. After that, you're on your own. We'll provide extraction coordinates, but we can't guarantee safety. I'm already wanted. Maxon checked the rifle, found it well maintained. Might as well earn it. Santos took a weapon from another resistance fighter. The sergeant's hands shook slightly, but his eyes were clear. Sir, I know I'm just a pilot, but you're a soldier, Maxon cut him off, and you just survived impossible odds. You've earned the right to see this through. Day 8, the transport ride had taken 4 days, not 3. The southern mountains were worse than intelligence suggested. Avalanches were constant. Blizzards reduced visibility to arm's length. Twice they had to abandon vehicles when crevasses opened beneath them. Maxon used the time to plan. The datapad Torrin provided was comprehensive, but it showed a facility designed by paranoid geniuses. Multiple security layers, overlapping kill zones, no single point of failure. And in the deepest levels, the labor camps. 200 prisoners, maybe more. Arcticon civilians, mostly. A handful of humans who'd stumbled onto the wrong secrets. And somewhere in that hell, a 15-year-old named Davin Kaylor. Lissa recovered faster than the medics predicted. By the second day, she was sitting up, demanding to see the facility plans. By the third, she was running combat drills with Maxon. They didn't talk about the confession she'd broadcast. Didn't talk about her father or Maxon's dead wife or the weight of betrayals too deep to voice. They focused on the mission, on the simple mathematics of violence and rescue. But at night, when Santos was asleep, Maxon and Lissa would sit together. Not touching, not speaking, just existing in the same space. On the 4th night, Lissa broke the silence. When we extract Davin, he won't want to leave. Maxon looked at her. What do you mean? There are 200 prisoners in that facility. Children, elderly, non-combatants. Davin is like our mother was. Believes in collective responsibility. Won't save himself if it means abandoning others. We can't extract 200 people, Lissa. The numbers don't work. I know. Her voice was quiet. But he'll refuse anyway. Will make us choose between leaving him or attempting the impossible. What would your mother do? Lissa smiled sadly. She'd attempt the impossible and probably die doing it. She looked at Maxon. My father executed her for that kind of thinking. Called it weakness. He executed his own wife, publicly, to make an example. The words came out flat, emotionless. I was 12. Davin was 7. We watched our mother die because she refused to abandon civilians during a Frost Clan raid. Lissa's hands clenched. That's when the Frost Clan recruited me, told me they could teach me to be strong, to never be weak like my mother. I believed them for 4 years before I understood what strength actually meant. Maxon thought about his wife, about her conviction that knowledge belonged to everyone, about how she died for that belief. Your mother wasn't weak, he said quietly. She was exactly what the world needed, what both our worlds needed. My father would disagree. Your father is wrong about a lot of things? Lissa laughed, bitter and genuine. Yes, he is. Day 12. Morning. The transport stopped in an ice valley 3 kilometers from the Frost Clan facility. Close enough to infiltrate on foot, far enough to avoid perimeter sensors. Commander Torrin met them as they disembarked. This is where we part ways, Colonel. The facility is due south, built into the mountain itself. Best approach is through the ventilation system. He indicated a point on the digital map. Bypasses most security, puts you directly into the lower levels where the prisoners are kept. Defenses. Automated turrets, patrol drones, and at least 50 Frost Clan enforcers. Human and Arcticon mixed, all heavily armed. Torn's expression was grim. Your window is tight. The facility runs a shift change at midnight. You'll have approximately 6 minutes where security is transitional, after that full lockdown. An extraction. There's a mining transport that leaves the facility at 0400 hours heading north. If you can reach it, we'll have resistance fighters waiting at checkpoint 7 to intercept. Torn handed Maxon a coded beacon. Activate this when you're aboard. That's a lot of ifs, Santos muttered. It's a suicide mission, Torn agreed, but it's the best I can offer. Maxon accepted the beacon. If we don't make it, the data chip Lissa carries will tell the story. One way or another, the truth comes out. Torrin gripped Maxon's shoulder. My people will be watching, Colonel. They set out at dusk. 3 people moving through a frozen hell, carrying weapons and desperate hope. The facility appeared gradually a cancer growing from the mountain's heart. What the schematics showed as a simple mining operation revealed itself as something far more sinister. Massive ice-cutting equipment surrounded by defensive emplacements. Guard towers rising like metal thorns. And deep underground, the heat signatures of hundreds of bodies working in conditions no sentient being should endure. There, Lissa pointed to a ventilation shaft. That's our entry point. They moved in combat formation. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for a human, but it was unguarded, overlooked. The descent took an hour, hand over hand down frozen metal, breathing recycled air that tasted of chemicals and despair. Maxon's muscles screamed. Behind him, he could hear Lissa's controlled breathing. They emerged into a service corridor, dimly lit and empty. According to the schematics, they were 3 levels above the labor camps, 3 levels of security patrols, and about 1,000 ways to die. Shift change in 4 minutes, Maxon whispered. We move fast and quiet. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. They moved through a mechanical hell, past automated assembly lines building weapons Maxon didn't recognize, past storage facilities filled with crystalline technology that pulsed with inner light, past offices where Frost Clan administrators planned and profit from genocide. The first patrol nearly caught them. 6 enforcers mixed human and Arcticon walking their route. Maxon, Lissa, and Santos pressed into shadows, barely breathing as the patrol passed within arm's reach. When they were gone, Lissa gestured toward a descending stairwell. Labor camps are 2 levels down. We're running out of time. They hit the stairs at a run. Behind them, Maxon heard alarms starting to blare. Shift change was over. Someone had noticed something wrong. The labor camp level hit Maxon like a physical blow. The smell came first. Unwashed bodies and industrial chemicals. Then the sound. Machinery grinding away at flesh and will. Then the sight. 200 people in cages. Working assembly lines under armed guard. Children barely old enough to walk carrying components too heavy for their frames. Elderly Arcticans with hands twisted from injury still working because stopping meant death. Humans and Arcticans side by side united in suffering. My God, Santos whispered. Lissa had gone absolutely still, her face a mask of controlled fury. There, 3rd row assembly line 7. Davin. Maxon saw him. A kid, thin and bruised, silver hair matted with grease. 15 years old and already ancient with a trauma. We get him, we get out, Maxon said. Amast and Brill. The alarms went from blaring to screaming. Red emergency lights flooded the chamber. Automated gun turrets dropped from the ceiling, targeting everything that moved. They'd been made. Go. Maxon opened fire on the nearest turret, plasma bolts turning it to slag. Beside him, Lissa was already moving her rifle, taking out guards with surgical precision. Santos covered their retreat. The labor camp erupted into chaos. Prisoners scattering guards, trying to establish control, automated defenses, killing indiscriminately. Maxon fought through it all, focused on one objective. Get to Davin. He reached the kid's cage, ripped the door open. Davin looked up at him with eyes exactly like his sister's, ice blue and defiant. You're Lissa's friend, the kid said. Not a question, a statement. I'm getting you out of here. No, Davin stood, and Maxon saw strength in him that belied his years. Not without the others. All of us or none of us. Behind them, the facility's security was responding with lethal efficiency. Frost Clan enforcers pouring into the chamber. Maxon had maybe 60 seconds before they were completely overrun. He looked at Lissa. She looked back at him. In her eyes, he saw his own impossible choice reflected. Santos was still laying down, covering fire, but his ammunition counter was dropping fast. The sergeant caught Maxon's eye, nodded once. Whatever you decide, sir, I'm with you. Maxon looked at Davin, at ice blue eyes that refused to compromise. At strength inherited from a mother who died rather than abandon civilians. The choice wasn't hard at all. Everyone out, Maxon's voice carried over the chaos. All prisoners move toward the north exit. We're leaving together. Lissa was already opening cages, her rifle providing cover. Santos had switched to grenade launcher, creating barriers of flame to slow the enforcers. Davin was herding the youngest prisoners, protecting them with his own body. 200 people began to move. Slowly at first, then faster, as hope replaced hopelessness. They moved like a tide, unstoppable, once in motion. The facility's automated defenses couldn't handle it, couldn't target everyone at once. Guards fell back, overwhelmed by numbers and desperation. They hit the north exit, running a wave of bodies and determination. The exit opened onto a loading bay where transport trucks waited, engines running for the 0400 departure. Move! Maxon herded people into trucks, not caring about capacity, just getting bodies into vehicles. Lissa and Santos provided rear guard. 200 people. 40 seconds. It wasn't enough time, but somehow, impossibly, they made it. The last prisoner climbed aboard just as Frost Clan reinforcements arrived. Maxon activated the beacon Torran had given him. The transport trucks lurched into motion. Behind them, the facility erupted into weapons fire. Plasma bolts scorched through the darkness. They were out. They were alive. 200 prisoners and 3 soldiers racing through Arcticon's frozen night. Maxon looked at Lissa. She looked back at him, violet blood on her face, ice in her eyes, and something that might have been hope. "We did it," she said, sounding surprised. "We did it," Maxon agreed. Santos was laughing, slightly hysterical. "We're all going to die, sir." "Probably," Maxon said, "but not today." The convoy raced north toward the extraction point, toward the resistance, toward whatever future waited. Behind them, the Frost Clan facility burned. Ahead, an uncertain dawn broke across Arcticon's frozen horizon. And somewhere in the lead truck, Davin Kalor sat with his sister's hand in his, looking at Colonel Maxon Thorne, with eyes that held understanding beyond his years. "Thank you," the kid said quietly, "for not leaving them behind." Maxon thought about mothers who died for principles, about the haste of doing the right thing when the mathematics screamed for easier choices. "Thank your mother," he said. "I'm just learning from the best." Day 13. The convoy hit the extraction point exactly on schedule. The resistance was waiting, weapons ready, a small army prepared to defend 200 freed souls. Commander Torran stood at the center of it all, looking at Maxon with something approaching respect. "You actually did it," the Arcticon said. "You magnificent, insane fool." "We had help," Maxon gestured to Lissa and Santos. "Yes, you did." Torran smiled, genuine and fierce. "Now comes the hard part. We've got proof of the Frost Clan's crimes, 200 witnesses, and about 6 hours before General Kalor throws everything he has at hunting you down." "Then we'd better move fast," Maxon said. "No." Torran's expression hardened. "You've done enough. Time to let the living finish this war." And in the pale light of Arcticon's sunrise, surrounded by people he'd saved and allies he'd earned, Colonel Maxon Thorne realized that being dead might be the best thing that ever happened to him, because the dead couldn't be stopped. And General Kalor was about to learn what that meant. Day 13, evening. The Resistance safe house smelled of hope and coffee, neither of which Maxon Thorne trusted anymore. Commander Torran had given them 12 hours. 12 hours to rest, to plan to extract the data chip from Lissa's body, and upload the evidence that would burn down the Frost Clan's empire. 12 hours before General Kalor mobilized every enforcer on Arcticon to hunt them down. Maxon stood at the window, watching the 200 freed prisoners file into shelters. Children clinging to parents they'd thought lost forever. Elderly Arcticans weeping with relief. Humans and Arcticans helping each other, united by shared suffering and unexpected salvation. In the corner, Davin Kalor sat wrapped in thermal blankets, his thin frame shaking from more than cold. 15 years old and hollow-eyed, carrying trauma that would take years to heal. Lissa was in the medical bay. The Resistance doctor, an older Arcticon female named Sarah, was preparing to extract the biointegrated data chip. The procedure was delicate, dangerous. One wrong cut and the chip would fry itself, destroying the only proof of the Frost Clan's crimes. Santos appeared at Maxon's elbow, 2 cups of something hot in his hands. The sergeant looked exhausted, but there was something different in his eyes now. Purpose, maybe, or peace. "Sir," Santos said quietly, offering a cup. "You should see this." He activated a data pad. News feeds scrolled across the screen, both Terran and Arcticon networks. Lissa's dying confession, recorded in that ice cave days ago, had spread like wildfire. Every major network, every public forum. The Frost Clan was scrambling. Official denials, accusations of propaganda, threats of legal action. But the damage was done. People were asking questions, demanding investigations. It's working, Santos said. Even if we never upload the hard evidence, she's already won. It's not enough. Maxon set down his cup untouched. Governments bury scandals every day. Without proof, without witnesses, this becomes noise. So we give them proof they can't ignore. Both men turned. Lissa stood in the doorway, her violet skin pale but steady. Dr. Sarah was behind her, holding a small, crystalline chip no bigger than a fingernail. The chip glowed with inner light, pulsing like a captured heartbeat. The extraction was successful, Sarah said, and the data is intact. Facility schematics, financial records, communications between Frost Clan leadership and military commanders on both sides. Her expression hardened. Enough to start a revolution if the right people see it. Or enough to get us killed, Lissa said quietly. She moved to where Davin sat, placed a gentle hand on her brother's shoulder. The boy looked up at her with eyes that held too much understanding for 15 years. Sister, Davin's voice was soft. Father will come for us. You know he will. I know. Lissa's fingers tightened slightly. That's why we're not running anymore. Maxon felt something cold settle in his chest. What are you planning? The data chip has everything except the one thing that will destroy my father completely. Lissa looked at him, and in her ice-blue eyes, Maxon saw determination forged in years of betrayal. His location, the primary Frost Clan facility where he and the other commanders coordinate their operations. The Southern Mountains, Maxon said, where my wife found the ruins. Yes, that's where the ancient power source is, where they're manufacturing the weapons, where my father thinks he's untouchable. Lissa's smile was cold and sad. I can get us inside. I know the security protocols, the guard rotations, the weaknesses. Santos shook his head. With all respect, that's suicide. We barely survived extracting prisoners from a labor camp. You're talking about attacking a military installation. I'm talking about ending this war. Lissa's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. The resistance can't move openly without triggering a civil war. But we're already dead in every official record. We can do what the living can't. And what exactly are we doing? Maxon asked, though he already knew. We're going to broadcast from inside the facility. Live feed. No edits, no denials, no possibility of suppression. Lissa's hand found Davin's squeeze gently. We're going to show the galaxy exactly what the Frost Clan has built. Show them the weapons, the ruins, the proof of everything. And your father? Lissa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of a lifetime's grief. My father executed my mother for choosing mercy over expedience. He sold me to the Frost Clan when I was 16. He sent me to die rather than risk his secrets being exposed. Her eyes met Maxon's. I'm going to give him one chance to choose differently. One chance to be the man my mother believed he could be. And if he refuses, then I'll do what he should have done years ago. I'll put duty above blood. Lissa's voice broke just slightly. I'll become what's necessary. The room fell silent. Outside through the window, Maxon could hear children laughing. Life asserting itself despite everything. Davin stood slowly, his thin frame straightening. I'm coming with you. No, Lissa's response was immediate. You're 15 years old. You've suffered enough. I'm the only one who knows the deep tunnels. Davin's voice was quiet but unyielding. The ventilation systems that bypass the automated defenses. The service corridors the guards don't patrol. His ice-blue eyes held his sister's. Mother taught me that strength isn't about protecting yourself. It's about protecting others even when it costs everything. Mother died for that belief. And you're about to die for it too. Davin's hand found Lissa's. So let me help. Let me be strong like her. Like you. Maxon watched the siblings, saw the same determination in both their faces. The same willingness to sacrifice everything for the possibility of doing the right thing. We leave in 6 hours, Maxon said quietly. Commander Terran will need transportation to the Southern Mountains and a communication system powerful enough to broadcast globally without interference. Terran, who'd been listening from the doorway, nodded slowly. I can provide both. But Colonel, you understand that once you begin that broadcast, every military force on Arcticon will converge on your location. You'll have maybe 10 minutes. Then we'd better talk fast. Day 15. Dawn. The journey to the Southern Mountains took 2 days of hard travel through terrain that wanted them dead. Blizzards that reduced visibility to nothing. Ice bridges over crevasses deep enough to swallow cities. Temperatures that turned breath to ice crystals. They talked during the journey. Not about tactics, but about the small human things. Lissa told stories about her mother, about a woman who'd believed that kindness was strength. Davin spoke about the other prisoners, about elderly Arcticans who'd shared their rations with the children. Santos talked about his own family, a daughter he hadn't seen in 3 years, a wife who'd stopped sending letters 6 months ago. And Maxon slowly, carefully began to talk about his wife, about her laugh when she discovered something new, about the way she'd looked at alien ruins with wonder, about how she'd believed that the key to ending the war wasn't superior weapons, but understanding. She would have liked you, Maxon said to Lissa on the second night. You think so? I know so. She always said the same thing you did, that humans and Arcticans weren't really different, that we were just two parts of the same story separated by time and space and stupidity. Lissa smiled, sad and genuine. Your wife was a wise woman. She was. Maxon looked at the data chip now secured in a protective case. She died trying to prove it. Maybe we can finish what she started. They reached the facility at dawn. It rose from the mountainside like a tumor, all harsh angles and defensive architecture. But beneath the military installation, Maxon could see hints of something older. Curved walls that didn't match human or Arcticon design. Crystalline structures that pulsed with light. The ancient ruins, the discovery that had killed his wife and sparked a war built on lies. There, Davin pointed to a ventilation shaft barely visible among the ice formations. That shaft connects to the service tunnels. If the schematics I memorized are still accurate, it puts us 3 levels above the primary power source. And your father, he'll be in command and control, top-level Eastern Wing. Lissa checked her weapon. That's where I'll broadcast from. Maximum communication range, hardest to jam. Maxon studied the facility through tactical imaging. Guards on rotation, automated defenses, energy barriers. The kind of security that said whoever was inside had secrets worth killing for. We go in quiet, he said. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. Our objective isn't to fight, it's to show the truth. They moved through morning mist, 3 figures against impossible odds. The ventilation shaft was exactly where Davin remembered. The descent was familiar now, hand over hand, through cramped darkness. But this time Maxon felt the weight of finality. This was the last mission. Win or lose, live or die, it ended here. They emerged into a service corridor that hummed with ancient power. The walls here were different, not prefabricated metal, but something that looked grown. Crystalline veins ran through the stone, pulsing with blue-white light. The ruins, Lissa whispered. They built the facility directly into the ancient structure. Davin led them deeper, navigating by memory through tunnels that seemed to shift. The ancient builders had understood space in ways that hurt to contemplate. They passed chambers filled with technology that made Terran science look primitive. Weapons that could crack planets, shields that bent space itself. And at the center of it all, a power source that sang with energy older than either civilization. My God, Santos breathed. If this technology got out, the galaxy would tear itself apart fighting over it. Maxon finished. That's why the Frost Clan wants it buried. They reached command and control through a combination of Davin's knowledge and sheer luck. The facility's security was designed to keep people out, not to stop those who'd already died. The chamber was vast, filled with holographic displays showing tactical data from across Arcticon, troop movements, supply chains, kill counts rendered in cold mathematics. And at the center, standing before the largest display, was General Kaler. He was taller than Maxon expected, broader through the shoulders. His violet skin was darker than Lysa's, marked with scars. His silver hair was bound in intricate braids. He turned as they entered, and Maxon saw Lissa's features reflected in his face. The same ice-blue eyes, the same sharp cheekbones, the same capacity for absolute conviction. Daughter, General Kaler said quietly. His voice was deep, controlled, carrying no surprise. I've been expecting you. Lissa raised her weapon, but her hands shook slightly. Father. Kaler's eyes shifted to Davin, and something flickered in their depths. Regret, perhaps. And my son. I'd hoped you would stay safe with the Resistance. You don't get to hope for us anymore. Davin's voice was steady. You lost that right when you sold sister, when you let mother die, when you chose power over family. I chose survival. Kaler's expression hardened. I chose to ensure our people would endure, even if it cost me everything I loved. His gaze returned to Lissa. You were always too much like your mother, too willing to sacrifice for strangers, too weak to do what necessity demands. Mother wasn't weak, Lissa's voice cracked. She was strong enough to die for what she believed, strong enough to choose mercy when you chose murder. And what did her strength accomplish? She's dead. I'm alive. I've risen to command. I've secured power that will protect our people for generations. Kalor gestured to the displays. This war, as brutal as it is, has kept both species focused on each other instead of tearing themselves apart. The ancient ruins are being studied, understood, prepared for proper use. Proper use, Maxon's voice cut through. You mean selling them to the highest bidder? Using slave labor to extract technology you don't understand? Perpetuating a war that's killed thousands for profit? Kaler looked at him properly for the first time. Colonel Maxon Thorne, I've read your file. You're intelligent enough to understand the mathematics. Sometimes the many must suffer so the few can survive. My wife believed the opposite, that the few should sacrifice so the many could thrive. Your wife was a fool, and her foolishness got her killed. Kalor's expression didn't change, brutal in its honesty. She discovered these ruins, understood their significance. If she'd been smart, she would have brought the information to proper authorities. Instead, she planned to publish it publicly. So the Frost Clan killed her. The Frost Clan made a necessary choice, as I've made necessary choices, as anyone who leads must make. Kalor's hand moved to a control panel, including the choice I'm about to make now. Alarms erupted throughout the facility. Security barriers slammed down. Automated turrets descended from the ceiling, targeting all of them. I gave you a chance to die quietly, Kalor said, on that glacier in that cave. I would have mourned you as fallen warriors. His voice hardened, but you kept coming back, kept threatening everything I've built. So now I'll bury you here in these ancient ruins, and the galaxy will remember you as traitors. Not before they see the truth. Lissa activated the broadcasting equipment powered by the facility's own communication array. You wanted to silence us, but we're already dead, Father. The broadcast began, live feed to every major network encrypted so it couldn't be shut down. The camera showed everything, the ancient ruins, the weapons manufacturing, the financial records scrolling across displays. General Kalor standing before proof of his crimes. And most damaging of all, it showed a father choosing power over his children. The galaxy is watching, Lissa said softly. They're seeing what you are, what the Frost Clan is. They're seeing the truth my mother died protecting. Kalor's hand tightened on the control panel. One button press and the turrets would fire. Maxon could see the calculation in the general's eyes, weighing options, measuring outcomes. You think this changes anything? Kalor's voice was cold. Governments will deny, people will forget. I'll survive this. Maybe. Lissa's weapon never wavered. But you'll do it alone, without legitimacy, without protection, without anyone who believes you're anything other than what you are. I'd rather be a living monster than a dead saint. I know, that's why you'll never understand what Mother tried to teach us. Lissa's eyes held her father's, and in that gaze, Maxon saw grief so deep it had no bottom. Strength isn't about survival, Father. It's about what you're willing to protect, what you're willing to become, what you're willing to sacrifice for something greater than yourself. Spare me the philosophy. I'm not the one who needs it. Lissa lowered her weapon slightly. I'm going to give you a choice, Father. The same choice you gave Mother. Choose Audi or choose mercy. Choose power or choose family. There is no family. I buried it when I buried your mother. Then you've already made your choice. Lissa's finger moved to her weapon's trigger, but Davin stepped forward, placing himself between his sister and their father. The boy's thin frame seemed impossibly fragile, but his voice carried strength. Don't, Davin said quietly. Don't become him. Don't let his choices poison yours. He tried to kill us. He's killed thousands. He'll kill thousands more if we let him walk away. I know. Davin's hand found Lysa's, gently lowering the weapon. But Mother wouldn't want you to become a killer. She'd want you to be strong enough to choose differently. Being strong enough to choose differently got her killed. And being like Father gets you nothing but isolation. Davin's ice blue eyes held his sister's. Let the galaxy judge him. Let his crimes be public. Let him live with what he's done every day for the rest of his life. That's a harder sentence than death. Maxon watched, knowing his vote didn't matter here. This was between the children and the man who'd betrayed them. Lissa was crying now, violet tears tracking down her face. He killed Mother. Sold me. Enslaved you. How do I just let that go? You don't let it go. Davin's voice was impossibly gentle. You just choose not to let it define you. Choose to be what Mother was. Someone who believed in mercy even when it hurt. General Kalor stood silent, watching his children decide his fate. And for the first time, the general's expression cracked. Just slightly. just enough to show the man beneath the monster. Your mother would be proud of you, Kaylor said quietly. Both of you, you have her strength, her conviction. He looked at Lysa. I am many things, daughter, a murderer, a tyrant, a man who chose wrong so many times I forgot what right looked like. But I loved your mother, and in my own twisted way, I loved you both. Love isn't supposed to hurt like this. No, no, it's not. Kaylor's hands lifted from the control panel. But it's all I have left to offer. The broadcast continued showing this moment of impossible vulnerability. A war criminal admitting his crimes, a father acknowledging his failures, a man choosing finally to stop running from the truth. The Frost clan leadership is in the lower levels, Kaylor said, his voice hollow. All of them. They're the ones who ordered your mother's death, who perpetuated this war. They're who you really want. And you, Maxon asked, I'll surrender to the resistance, face trial for my crimes, spend whatever time I have left trying to make amends I know I can never fully make. Kaylor looked at his children one last time. But first, I'm going to help you finish what your mother started. What followed was the longest 10 minutes of Maxon's life. General Kaylor, broadcasting his confession, led them through the facility to the lowest levels, where Frost Clan leadership gathered around the ancient power source, where human and Arcticon conspirators planned the next phase of their profitable war. The broadcast showed all of it, every face, every crime, every piece of evidence. And at the center of it all, the ancient power source, a crystalline structure the size of a building pulsing with energy that predated both civilizations. Beautiful and terrible. This is what they killed for, Lysa's voice narrated. This is what my mother died protecting. Technology so advanced, we barely understand it. Technology that could unite our species or destroy them. And you propose what? A Frost Clan elder stepped forward, an ancient Arcticon female. Destroying it? No. Maxon moved to stand beside Lysa. We propose doing what was wanted from the start, making it public, letting scientists from both species study it together, turning it from a weapon into a bridge. The elder laughed cold and bitter. You're fools. Humanity and Arcticans will never cooperate. We're too different. We were, Davin's young voice cut through, until we weren't, until we were forced to work together to survive, until humans and Arcticans shared cells, shared suffering, shared hope. He looked at the camera. I spent 3 months in slavery. You know who saved my life more times than I can count? An old human named Marcus who shared his food. An Arcticon grandmother who taught me prayers when I'd lost hope. We're not different. We're just scared. Outside, Maxon could hear the sound of approaching forces. The resistance. Terran military. Arcticon loyal forces. The facility had maybe 5 minutes. We're done here, Maxon said. The broadcast is uploaded. The truth is out. They exited into chaos. Resistance forces on one side, Frost Clan enforcers on the other, and in the middle, uncertain soldiers who just learned everything they'd fought for was a lie. General Kaylor walked out with his children, hands raised in surrender. The sight sent shockwaves through the assembled forces. I am General Davos Kaylor, he announced, and I am guilty of crimes against both of our peoples. I surrender myself to joint custody to face trial for my actions. But before I do, I ask one thing. He looked at Lysa and Davin, at Maxon and Santos. I ask that you listen to these people, these soldiers who refused to stop fighting for what was right, even when it cost them everything. His voice broke slightly. They're what our species could be if we chose courage over convenience, mercy over murder, hope over hatred. Commander Terran approached, flanked by resistance fighters. General Kaylor, by the authority of the Arcticon resistance, in the Provisional Council, I'm placing you under arrest. I understand. Kaylor allowed himself to be restrained, but before Terran led him away, the general turned to his children one last time. I know I have no right to ask forgiveness, but I want you to know that your mother would be so proud of who you've become. And so am I. Lysa said nothing, just stood there, violet tears freezing on her face. Davin's hand found hers, and they watched their father led away. Maxon felt a hand on his shoulder. Turned to find General Navarro. Colonel Thorne, she said quietly, you've created one hell of a diplomatic incident. Sorry, ma'am. Seemed like the right thing to do. It was. Navarro's expression was complicated. The broadcast has triggered crises on both sides. Resignations, investigations, calls for peace talks. You've effectively ended the war. We ended a lie. Philosophical but accurate. Navarro looked at Lysa and Davin. What happens to them? That's up to them. Lissa spoke without turning. We want asylum. Terran citizenship if you'll grant it. A chance to start over. And you? Navarre asked Davin. The boy smiled, tired but genuine. I want to go to school, learn xenoarchaeology, finish what Colonel Thorne's wife started. Maxon felt something break and heal in his chest. His wife would have loved that, would have mentored this kid. I think that can be arranged, Navarre said. 4 months later, the peace talks had succeeded. The Frost Clan leadership faced justice. General Kaler was sentenced to lifetime exile. The ancient ruins became a joint research facility staffed by scientists from both species. They worked slowly, carefully, understanding that technology could either unite or destroy. Maxon was quietly reinstated, though he turned down the promotion. He did accept one assignment. Director of the Joint Cultural Exchange Program, working with Lysa to build bridges. And every day, he visited the memorial they'd built. A simple structure of ice and light, inscribed with names of everyone who died seeking peace. On the 4-month anniversary, Maxon stood at that memorial as dawn broke. He wasn't alone. Lysa stood beside him. Davin was there too, wearing the academy uniform of a student. Santos had gone home, back to Earth, back to his wife and daughter. She would have liked this, Lysa said quietly. Your wife. She would have preferred not dying at all, Maxon said. But yes, this would have made her happy. Do you think it was worth it? Davin asked. All the suffering, all the death. Do you think we actually made things better? Maxon thought about ice caves and impossible rescues, about children laughing, about enemy soldiers sharing rations, about a galaxy slowly learning that being different didn't mean being enemies. Ask me again in a few years, he said, when the peace has had time to take root. That's not an answer, Lysa observed. No, it's not. Maxon smiled slightly, but it's the best I can offer. They stood together as the sun rose. In the distance, construction crews worked on the first integrated settlement, humans and Arcticans building homes side by side. Children of both species played in the snow. And somewhere in exile, then General Davos Kalor watched the same sunrise and wept for the family he'd destroyed and the peace his children had built. Maxon touched the memorial one last time. I finished it, he whispered. Your work, your dream, we finished it together. Lyssa's hand found his warm, cool human meeting, Arcticon. Thank you, she said quietly, for seeing past the enemy, for choosing to save instead of destroy, for being strong enough to hope when hope seemed impossible. Maxon looked at the rising sun, at the integrated settlement, at the 2 Arcticans who'd become his family. He thought about his wife and what she'd say if she could see this moment, about General Kalor's last look at his children, regret coming too late but still genuine, about Santos going home with stories of hope, about 200 freed prisoners building new lives, about a galaxy that was learning slowly and painfully that being different was strength, not weakness. She would have been so proud of you, Maxon said to Davin, of both of you. And you, Lysa asked, are you proud of what we accomplished? Maxon thought about it, honest, careful, understanding the weight of the question. I'm proud, he said finally, not of the war or the deaths or the suffering, but of the choices we made when everything was impossible, of choosing to save instead of sacrifice, of refusing to become the monsters fear wanted us to be. He looked at Lysa. I'm proud we proved that even when everything screamed otherwise, hope could survive. The sun climbed higher, painting Arcticon's ice in colors that looked almost like home, almost like peace, almost like the future his wife had died believing was possible. And on that frozen world beneath ancient ruins and new hope, 3 people stood together and watched the dawn of something beautiful born from ashes and blood and impossible courage. The war was over. The healing had just begun. And somewhere in the light, Maxon could swear he heard his wife laugh, not sad, not bitter, just genuinely, joyfully pleased that her sacrifice had meant something after all. That love in the end had proven stronger than fear. That hope, however fragile, had survived the frozen night, and that even in the darkest cold warmth could still be found. Not in a bed, but in the bonds forged between warriors who chose mercy over murder, hope over hatred, and tomorrow over yesterday.